I think a lot of fans had a problem with this scene. How could such an obviously effective maneuver not be a common tactic? Why has nobody ever thought to ram an enemy starship at hyperspeed? Lore broken. Plot hole. It retroactively invalidates all of Star Wars. Yeah, I've heard all that. And I think just the opposite. Star Wars has already given us enough information and context as to why this would be at least an uncommon tactic. Firstly is scale. Looking at the scene in question, the Raddus is absolutely the largest ship that the Rebellion has ever had access to, and it's considerably larger than most ships we've seen in Star Wars, with the exception of the Executor and the Supremacy, and of course the Death Stars. The Raddus is capable of inflicting such catastrophic damage because it's enormous, and even then, most of the destruction was because Holdo got extremely lucky with that cloud of hyper-accelerated shrapnel. But the primary target wasn't even destroyed, so forget shooting some sort of a hyperspace missile at something like the Death Star. I highly doubt that it would do much of anything, even if it were a huge missile. And do you really think that the Rebel Alliance had access to those resources? We see pretty much the entire scope of the Rebel fleet at Endor. Sure, they could have had a bunch of little hyperspace missiles to shoot at Star Destroyers, but the Rebellion had already figured out that small craft and improvisational tactics were usually enough. We learned in The Phantom Menace that hyperdrives are expensive.
They might as well buy a new ship. It would be cheaper, I think, huh?
And we know that the Empire forgoes installing them on TIE fighters for likely the same reason. Hyperdrives aren't some cheap, expendable technology. They're expensive and high maintenance. And a cash-strapped rebellion has absolutely no business destroying such a valuable resource for just one kill. Money isn't infinite in Star Wars, and it's definitely a major consideration for the rebellion. Sure, this Hammerhead Corvette could have hyperdrived into the shield gate and brought it down. It could have also hyperdrived into this Star Destroyer, and it could have done the same to this Star Destroyer, but they didn't, and actually brought down all three in one stroke. A good sense of ingenuity and a ship to carry out a variety of roles and missions is infinitely more valuable to the Rebellion than a purpose-built cash sink that might bring down a single target, and perhaps they'd get lucky with the shrapnel and take down a few more. Now, we did see how effective the relatively small pieces of debris could be against a Star Destroyer, so there's evidence that we could still probably do a good deal of damage with a small craft at hyperspeed. Maybe even something as small as a blockade runner or a Gallifrey transport. But again, a craft that size is more useful as a fully functional ship than as a missile. And honestly, that cloud of shrapnel is just as much one of the reasons why you wouldn't use this tactic as it is a reason why you would. It's equally dangerous to your own forces as it is to the enemy, and polluting space with hyper-accelerated, catastrophically deadly debris could be a nightmare. It's like asking why militaries don't just nuke their enemies at the first opportunity. Now, this whole time we've been talking about this from the perspective of the underdogs, but what about the Republic or the Empire? And honestly, why would they? They already have superior firepower, so there's no need for such desperate and wasteful tactics. And honestly, with the exception of, I guess, the Death Star, these superior forces often apply their firepower pretty judiciously. If you have the firepower that can kill or cripple a target in one hit, why would you waste the resources to do otherwise? So there are scenarios where combatants in Star Wars could have used this tactic, but there are a number of reasons why it would be a rare or almost unheard of solution, as there's virtually always a cheaper and safer alternative. Are there other scenarios I didn't consider or might have missed? And after all this, do you still think that the hyperspeed ramming scene breaks the lore of Star Wars? Let me know why. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe for more, and if you want to ensure a vibrant future for the channel, there's no better way to help out than checking out my Patreon. To the rest of you, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.